Hello and welcome to another in our series of CMMI Tech Talks looking at specific practice areas within the CMMI model. In this talk, we are going to review the organizational training, otherwise known as OT, practice area. We will discuss the intent of this practice area and look at what value it can provide to an organization, as well as looking at the individual practices to see how they can be used to build up the knowledge and skills that an organization needs to meet its business objectives and deliver its products and services effectively. Organizational training, OT, is one of three practice areas within the managing the workforce capability area, which is in the managing category. To operate efficiently, any organization needs to ensure it has the required skills and expertise within its workforce to be able to discharge their duties effectively and efficiently. High-quality products and services are unlikely to be created if the workforce does not have the necessary skills. Additionally, there is a staff development element to this. If we train staff to not only do their current job well, but also to develop their skills beyond their current role, we are more likely to be able to retain them and their expertise within the organization. Finally, most organizations also have a legal obligation to ensure their staff are trained in certain key regulatory subject areas such as fire and hazard safety, ethics, diversity, and many other subjects relating to their relevant industry. All these factors demand an organizational approach to staff training. We shall start our review of the organizational training practice area by looking at the key mandatory model components, the high-level intent and value statements. Intent develops the skills and knowledge of personnel so they perform their roles efficiently and effectively. Value enhances individuals' skills and knowledge to improve organizational work performance. The main thing to note from both the intent and value statements is that the focus for this practice area is very much on the development of the personnel within the organization. If we want to be a high-performing, capable organization, then our workforce also needs to be high-performing and capable. The effectiveness of the organization is a function of the effectiveness of the staff within it. This is especially true of organizations which operate in a dynamic and changing marketplace. The need to adapt and evolve is literally a matter of survival in some cases. By improving the workforce's skills and knowledge, we uplift the organization's capabilities and remain competitive, or even, if the organization is sufficiently forward-thinking, gain a competitive advantage by ensuring our skill set is keeping pace with market trends. Consider, for example, the recent shift towards agile development approaches in the IT development market. The word recent is perhaps a little misleading here, since agile practitioners have been around for a very long time, but it is fair to say that agile methods have become significantly more popular over the last 15 to 20 years. Many organizations which had previously operated purely in a more phased, traditional approach have now discovered that their customers have an expectation they will engage in an agile way. Failure to demonstrate any ability to utilize agile methods can now be a significant blocker to winning work in many market sectors. However, agile development and traditional development involve quite different skill sets and mindsets, so organizations that find themselves in this situation have a clear business driver to take the necessary steps to ensure their workforce is adequately trained in this new way of working. The practices of organizational training go up to practice group level 3 and reflect the expected evolutionary progression towards increasing capability. The level 1 practice simply expects us to undertake some training of the workforce, but does not go into any further detail. At level 2, training becomes a little more planned and considered. We start to look at what training we need and then seek to address those needs and keep appropriate records. Level 3 is focused on organizationally defined processes, and this practice area is about organizational training. So it will probably come as no surprise to you to learn that much of the detail of this practice area comes into play at Level 3, where we start to look at the different type of training needs and properly plan an organizational strategy to meet these needs. Let us look now at the individual practices of organizational training, OT, practice areas. OT 1.1 is arguably the smallest practice statement in the whole model. It simply states that we should train people. This is perhaps unsurprising. The absolute minimum that we might expect by way of organizational training is that we do demonstrate that some training of our staff takes place. However, there is no expectation at this stage that this will be underpinned by a specific plan or strategy. Level 2 starts to provide us with a little bit more by way of a planned and structured approach. OT 2.1 looks for us to identify what our specific training needs are. A training need analysis typically involves a few key steps that we might summarize as: number 1, identify what skills we need within the business, typically on a role basis. Number 2, work out what skills our existing workforce have already. Number 3, work out where the gaps are between our skill needs and our existing skill set. And number 4, figure out what training we need to organize to close the gaps. By undertaking this sort of analysis, we can reduce our training costs, partly by taking advantage of economies of scale if several people need the same course, but mainly by ensuring we only provide necessary training. Having identified what our training needs are, OT 2.2 then looks for us to implement this outline plan and train the people as identified. Furthermore, it looks for us to create and maintain records of training that has been provided. This not only helps us to maintain our training needs analysis, but can also feed staff development activities by ensuring we have a current record of the training each individual has received. As we then step up into the Level 3 practices, OT 3.1 introduces a further layer of planning onto our training activities by looking for us to identify strategic and short-term training needs. Short-term training needs help us to ensure that we can continue to operate as we currently are and meet any immediate issues appropriately. Consider a trained and qualified electrician who is busy rewiring houses, extending home power circuits, and other similar activities. This electrician is legally able to undertake this work provided he has the necessary qualifications and licensing to demonstrate that he understands and can work to current regulations regarding home electrical wiring. If those regulations were to be updated, then the electrician will suddenly have a short-term training need to update their own qualifications to cover the updated regulations to continue working. The other aspect of OT 3.1 is the strategic training needs. These are needs we will need to address as an organization to keep our staff trained and aligned to our organization's strategic plan. We may need to upskill our personnel and move them to different areas of work. For the electrician, for example, their organization may have a strategic objective to start delivering more renewable energy solutions to their customers, so they may need to train their staff in the installation of solar panels. This is a strategic training need to develop new capability in an area where currently they have no expertise. Both strategic and short-term needs are essential to the ongoing success of the organization, and so both need to plan accordingly. If we look back at our previous example of the organization using agile development, this organization might be an industry with increasing security requirements and standards that they must comply with. This same organization may need to consider adopting more of a DevSecOps approach by adding more security practices into their software development and delivery process. This push may require the use of additional tools within the process, and there may need to be some short-term training needs to familiarize the team with the new tools. The organization may also be considering, as part of the strategic mission, to start incorporating more artificial intelligence in their work, and they will need to properly plan and acquire the skills for this longer-term goal. Organizational training is concerned with the training needs that are common across projects and functions within the organization. Sometimes, however, individual projects will have training requirements specific to them. In such cases, individual projects may address their own specific project needs, but they may do this with assistance from the organization's training personnel, either by supporting the setting up and administration of training sessions, or more directly through delivering the necessary training if they are able to do so. OT 3.2 seeks for project and organizational training resources to work together to deliver an optimal training solution. Note this includes maintaining an awareness of individual project demands to ensure that mandatory legal compliance training does not adversely impact key project activities, and by enabling projects with niche skills to help propagate those skills to other areas that might identify a similar training need. OT 3.3 specifically calls for the establishment of training plans to meet both the short-term and strategic training needs of the organization. Planning is essential here. Training is usually expensive and disruptive. It can involve key resources being removed from productive work for days or even weeks at a time, so care needs to be taken to schedule training events in a way that minimizes disruption while also still delivering the necessary skills uplift in the required timescale. OT 3.4 looks for us to establish and use a training capability to address the organization's training program. The phrase training capability is deliberately non-specific. For some organizations, a dedicated training department, complete with associated real estate and infrastructure, might be appropriate. For others, a partnering agreement with a professional training provider might be more cost-effective. And for still others, it might be a shared role for a single individual within a small organization, or even a corporate subscription to an online training provider. The training capability needs to be appropriate to the specific needs of the organization and must be capable of supporting the identified training plan, but the details of its implementation are up to the organization to establish. The provision of training and an organizational training capability will usually represent a substantial investment for an organization, so it makes sense for that organization to take steps to understand if that investment is delivering the expected return. OT 3.5 calls for us to assess and report on the effectiveness of the organizational training program. We need to understand if our staff are achieving the desired uplift in their skills and expertise, and if that, in turn, is helping the organization to meet our defined performance improvement goals. There are many techniques we can employ to assess the effectiveness of the training program, but the key in this practice is that we are assessing the training itself, not the individual's performance. So any training assessment data should not be directly shared with line managers, although it will contribute to individuals' development plans. OT 3.6 extends this concept a little further. The effectiveness of the overall training program will be derived substantially from the records that we keep of individual training events. OT 3.6 looks for us to use these records to understand how well the training program supports the achievement of business and performance goals. These then are the practices of the organizational training practice area. To summarize the main points, OT covers understanding strategic and short-term training needs, establishing appropriate training plans to address the identified needs, establishing a training capability, training people in accordance with the plans, keeping records of training received, and understanding the effectiveness of delivered training. Thank you for joining us for the CMMI Tech Talk. If you have questions, please contact us at support.isaca.org.